Hey everybody, before I get to my guest this week, I want you to explain to me, send me an email through my website, paulmecurio.com, or on Twitter, @paulmecurio, or my Facebook page, Paul Mecurio. What the hell is going on with these Matthew McConaughey commercials selling Lincoln Continentals? If the goal of Lincoln Continental is to have me drive around pontificating about life in some absurd way to the point where my head is up my own ass, and that I want to drive myself off a cliff in one of their cars, they've achieved their goal. I don't understand them. I don't know what the marketing angle is. Email me. Twitter, Facebook. Let's get in and have a conversation about this. Someone explain to me what's going on. This week's guest, Owen Benjamin, very funny comedian. He's a regular cast member on Sullivan Sons on TBS. Seen him on the late night shows, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Really funny dude, history buff. We talk about World War I, World War II, bulldozing bodies, which, always funny, and quite the musical prodigy, too. He does musical comedy. So it's a really, really cool conversation, and we get into a lot of cool stuff and go in a lot of different directions. And we want you to keep spreading the word about the podcast. So I ask you this week to find 3 friends or family members and send each of them a link to my podcast on iTunes and ask them to subscribe. We want to keep building the Paul Mecurio Nation. You guys are awesome. Thanks for supporting me. And check out my website, paulmecurio.com, where you can get my new CD. But find 3 people this week and send them the link to my podcast and ask them to start subscribing. Free downloads. We want to keep building the love. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thanks for tuning in, as they say. Guest of mine, very, very funny comedian. We're here in Los Angeles at the Sideshow Network studios, and I am here with the very, very funny Owen Benjamin.
Hello.
What's up, man?
What's going on?
A little sick. I appreciate you coming out.
It's all good.
Very cool.
I rallied.
And Owen and I did a show together up in San Francisco a couple of years ago. Great guy, really funny comedian. He was a regular on Steve Burns' show on TBS. Why is the name escaping me? Sullivan Son. Really good.
Thanks.
And you've done movies, and from Oswego, New York, and you're also like into you're a musical guy, musical comedian.
I am, piano.
How did that? Were you like really good like musician as a kid and stuff, or were you thinking, hey, maybe I'll play music?
Yeah, I was always really good at piano because that's all we really had. Like, my parents are like professors who don't make a lot of money.
Oswego, New York.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So very educated, well paid. So it's an interesting combination. We didn't have a TV for most of my childhood. We had a lot of books and piano, and I was a chubby kid. My mom
You were a chubby kid. You're like 6', 7".
That's the thing. It's before the Great Dane grows. It's goofy, big paws. So I was this fat kid. My mom made my clothes. So, I had a rough, awkward beginning. I guess everyone does. Everyone says that. But
I got picked on with my lips because I got big lips. I had really big lips when I was a kid.
The lips are a good thing, though. That's like
now they are, but then they'd call me fish lips. They'd call me, pardon it, but I'm going to say it, nigger lips. They'd call me all sorts of. And I grew up like in an Italian neighborhood in Rhode Island.
Right.
So all people knew was like to pick on each other and then fight. That was
right. Yeah, Oswego's kind of like that.
It's like kind of.
You just pick whatever makes you different.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when I moved to LA. That's when I first met hipsters, which we didn't have, and they're like indoor cats. Where like you're not allowed to attack them, or they get like male self-esteem. I never was introduced to until I moved here.
Is it because when you were like, how was it not having a TV? Was it like would you feel out of the conversations with your friends and stuff like that?
Well, I only had one friend, and we just drew weapons all day, like dungeons weapons.
Oh,
kind of
really?
Weird. He moved out here with me. He's doing really well.
Yeah,
he's a good guy. But that was my only friend for a long time.
Neither of you snapped and killed anybody. That's good.
No, we just we wanted to be ninjas. We had one star. We'd throw it and then find it. Usually, if you're gonna have flying stars, have more than one.
Yeah. So it's a good workout. That's how you keep your weight down. You run, get the star, bring it back.
But if you miss, your enemies watch you retrieve the star.
So
piano just all day. That's all I played. So I was not to sound like a dick, but I was really, really good. And also because my teacher was really good, because this is an interesting story. I didn't realize that this was an interesting story until I was telling someone about it. She got a sex change when I was 11, but before that, she was obviously a very open-minded person with, a little backstory to this. she would teach me all the songs that people wouldn't teach kids. I think anybody could be phenomenal at music. It's like a language. I think it's comparable to just being bilingual.
Yeah.
So she would just be like, yeah, he should be able to play Beethoven. Of course. And I could by like 6. And I think most people could if someone thought it possible.
Instead of teaching you chopsticks. Or
right.
Yeah,
it's just like it's like when you're around a kid who's in a family where everyone talks a lot, they can talk fine.
Right.
And it's that same mentality that made her be like, why can't I have a dick? And so she got one. And it was funny because she got a sex change on, I don't know when she got it exactly, but on Halloween, she came dressed as a man with a beard. And I was like, oh, it's a great costume. I might have been 9. I was either 9 or 11. And then I remember November hit. And by like Thanksgiving, I was like, yo, she's like really into Halloween. And then I realized that if you're going to have a sex change, do it on Halloween. It's just an easier transition.
It buys you some time.
Yeah,
people think you're really into the character.
And if anybody's super crazy, they can just stand in denial and be like, it's Halloween.
What? I'm just really into the holiday. Mm-hmm. But don't you think that you were able to pick up Beethoven at 6 because your environment, you had, very cerebral parents, you had an environment where you didn't have distraction of TV? And so
100%.
Because, dude, my parents, I have an older brother, older sister. Sister played piano. Brother, accordion. That's an instrument that gets you laid.
Right.
And by the time it came to me, they were like, we spent too much money on lessons and neither of the other kids. So they got me a guitar and they got me a cassette or something, and I could listen to a guy teach me. Like, they wouldn't get me like a human being to teach me. Well, when you're like 11, you don't have the discipline to learn that way. So I never learned, and I'm fascinated. I think I can't get my head around how people can hear music and write it, and they're like a comedy, one thing, but like you can hear harmony and all of that other stuff.
I'd say it's the most comparable to language, and that's because a lot of people have all like sometimes because I can just hear a song and play it, and people are like, "You're an angel," and back in the day when I was like 17 or 18, just getting into like sexuality, I'm like, "I am now, suck me." And then I realized that was a real douchey move.
That was your teacher you were talking to. The one
oh yeah, I didn't judge either way. But then I realized that was. It's literally like being around a Japanese person and being like, how do you understand each other?
Right.
And they're like, this is just our language. And it's like, but when you're like, it's like, how do you know what that means? It's literally that. You're not like, I'm not gifted. There's no, like, my grandfather was a coal miner who didn't play music. It's not like a genetic thing. Yeah. You want to make it seem that way because then, girls want your dick because they think it might be DNA, but it's not.
It's a magical dick.
Yeah, it's like, oh, his DNA is better than the rest of the DNA. It's like, no, my environment had a piano in it, and I was fat.
Was it good? Was it good for women though? Like by the time you were in high school, were you using music? Were you in a band or anything like that?
Well, that's the thing. I was very inexperienced. High school, I never had sex with anybody. And I had a lot of friends in high school, but you always kind of carry that. In economics, it's called an anchor price. I don't know if that makes sense, but whatever you're first exposed to, you think that's kind of it. So I was like, oh, I'm not the guy who gets chicks. I'm the funny guy, or I'm the guy that like does weird shit. And then when I went to college, I realized that what I was got like tons of it was like overflow immediately.
What, because of the music or because you were just
and I was like a nice person.
Nice guy. Yeah.
I wasn't like, I didn't pick up a lot of those traits that you pick up when you like fuck a ton in high school because I fucked 0.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this girl's really cool. She has a lot to say. And within like 20 minutes of that, they're like, you're amazing. And I'm like, why? Because I just assumed that we're going to talk.
Right.
And that was such an edge in the sexual department that I didn't even know existed. And then the piano. Yeah, every dorm had a piano. So I would just chill and play piano and just be by myself. And you're playing Canon in D one day, and the next thing you know, like, girls are figuring out who's better at giving head. And you're like, I'm still a virgin, but now I'm getting boned by 2 girls. It's very uncomfortable. And then I fell in love pretty soon after that. And so I tapped out for a while.
Yeah. Well, Maria's producing this. Thank you, Maria. And I guess, does a musician turn on a woman? Is there something special?
Oh, yeah.
Does it make him feel sensitive? Is that the thing, you think? Is that the vibe he gives off? Sorry, I put you on the spot. If you don't have to answer.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just figured I should answer on mic. Yeah, I think it's some sort of artistic thing.
Yeah.
Like musicians, artists, people who create from within.
Yeah.
There's this, they must know themselves. They're so sensitive.
Yeah.
There's actually some science behind it. I just read, it's called This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin. He's a neurologist. He used to be a music producer. And music instinctual, like it's attractive because it shows that you have an excess of resources.
In what
any like skill, like random skill, it's like peacocking. Like a peacock feather is literally unnecessary use of calories. So like mates are like, look at how big that peacock is. They didn't need that to survive. Therefore, they have a strong family structure and they're good hunters or whatever. It's the same with music. It's like they come from a strong enough family structure or they have enough money or resources where they can spend all this time learning a skill that doesn't matter. It's the same with like origami or anything that's like not necessary to your exact
juggling,
right?
Like that, right?
Anything, just any skill is attractive because it also is rhythmic, which is obviously has sexual connotations, and it's a universal language, so it can cross racial barriers, cultural barriers. You know, you're communicating with someone who can't necessarily speak your language. And that's what sex is also. So music can break into that, and then sex.
Can I just say something? I kind of want to fuck you right now.
Oh, thanks, man.
I mean, he's got like a deep thing, and there's like shit going on. No, I'm not trivializing it. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, did you ever see bands and think, oh, it'd be cool to play in a band and like be part of that whole thing, and then that opens up a whole other doors on the social scene and all that?
No, I always wanted to do stand-up, to be honest with you.
Did you really?
Yeah.
When you were a kid?
I mean, I didn't know it at the time. My dad's a public speech professor, so I always wanted to be in front of people. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer because I just wanted to just crush juries. But
you wanted to be the guy who makes the closing
I want to
argument.
be like, Your Honor, my client. I want to be that guy.
And then he saunters over to a piano in the courtroom and then just taps out a few things on the piano and crushes and walks out.
And I just keep asking the jury if they've never made mistakes. That'd be my whole move. And then I'd constantly be opening and closing my briefcase and saying, we're done here. No, I had it all planned out. And then I did an internship. One of my dad's students was like, Owen, you got to come down. I don't think this is for you. I'm like, why? He's like, just come. So I just saw that it's just mountains of paperwork. And I'm like borderline dyslexic with spelling. So I'm like, this sucks.
Well, I was a lawyer, so I could tell you that you're right. It's like if that's not where your heart is, it's hard.
Yeah, you went to like a sick law. Where'd you go? Georgetown, yeah.
Yeah. And I was doing corporate law and then fell into this, and it was like they just put you in a room and fucking back up a truck.
Oh, yeah. And he was like, and then he came to my show at Gotham last weekend, and he loves his job. I mean, he still loves his job, but he's like, He's like, I saved you.
That's your friend who said that.
Oh, my dad's student,
yeah. That's so funny. And you keep in touch with this guy and everything?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really kind of him to do because, being a lawyer is for certain people, but he knew it wasn't for me because I'm a broad strokes guy.
Yeah.
I just, my draw to law would have been dominating a room.
Yeah.
And that's not most law.
No, or it is, but you have to work 30 years to get there. Like you have to be the you have to be the gray-haired guy with the partner who has the right to just come in and go, blah blah, yes, we will, and negotiate this thing, and then turn to Owen or Paul and go, okay, so write that up, and then go to like a 2-hour lunch, right? So you get to do that, but it takes literally 20 years of going through all that other shit.
Yeah, Matlock didn't start off as Matlock.
No, Matlock doesn't get to go in and just wear a
gray suit,
a powder blue suit from the South, and just. So did your dad or your mom? They seem pretty open minded. I would imagine when they started. Were you like in high school where you started trying to play around with comedy and shit?
Yeah, I was a heckler at a Renaissance festival, and that's really what did it for me. I knew I could because I started beating the joust in crowds.
What is it? I've been to Renaissance festivals.
So there's it's called Tomato Justice, where a dude's playing a prisoner, and his head and hands are in a lock.
Yeah.
And people pay money to throw tomatoes at their face.
Oh, he's like in the center town square and all that. Yeah.
And so I started really turning up the heat, and I would get these huge crowds because I would say the craziest shit, and I figured out whole theorems that kind of worked, and I started getting such big crowds that I was like, I can do this in like a scientific way.
Right.
And then I realized,
But by being outrageous, and the more outrageous, the better.
well, it's not just outrage equals better. It's attack what someone has pride in, not like anything based on what you believed. Like a 300-pound man doesn't care if you call him fat, but someone who is like 5 pounds overweight and insecure would be devastated.
Yeah.
You know, a really ripped guy, like a gay joke would work because
Yeah.
that's what he's most afraid of.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you know, or like, but, you know, a gay man holding a man's hand wouldn't give a shit. He's like,
Right.
yeah, I'm gay.
Right. Right.
It's all pride.
Right.
And women don't ever attack women. Just
Yeah.
like, I mean, you can't in crowd like if you're doing stand up and someone's like some chicks like drunk and heckling and you give them options, then you can. But in crowds, don't just be like, hey, fuck you, bitch. Like that doesn't work. What I found was sexualizing them, because bear in mind at the time I was 16, so now it'd be a little different. But you know, it's like I'd see like a dad with his daughter. I'd be like, "How old's your daughter?" And he'd be like 14. I'm like, "Tick tock, tick." I'm like, "I'm here for her." And I'm like, "And your wife digs me." And he's like, "Good." He's like, "I'm like, I'm 16, but I'm 6'4", and you're always gone." And I'm like, "Look at me, look at her with the light in her eyes." I'm like, "She loves you, but she loves the way you used to look at her."
You're saying this at 16?
Oh yeah, and
Dude, you're ahead of your time. That's a pretty advanced 16.
because I wasn't getting laid.
No, but don't you think?
No, but that's the thing. I got to actually like be smart about this shit.
But
Like,
that's like a sophisticated heckle. Like that's like a high level heckle. You're a bright fucking guy.
I was doing it 9 hours a day. So it started with me being like, "Art thou awake?" Eh? And people being like, "That's nothing." And then I like learned through like horrible mistakes what works.
Would you do the British thing? The whole like
No. Well, after like the second day, I'd just be like, "Your mom wants to fuck me." And same with grandmas. I'm like, "Your grandma wants me." And like people would start giggling, and I'm like, "Take a Centrum Silver, make sure your hip's strong. Let's go to work." And I'd be like, "Oh, you don't think she gets down? How do you think you got here? She's been fucking since before you were born." And they just start like glowing because now they're throwing tomatoes for attention. The dudes are throwing tomatoes out of rage, and I would get a percentage. So the more tomatoes, the better. So I wanted the women to stay.
You get paid based on a percentage of tomatoes thrown?
Right. So I had to like really garner. If I was like, "Hey, bitch," they wouldn't throw. They'd be like, "Fuck you." But if you flirt with her,
Yeah.
because you're not a threat. Like if you're just like some asshole on the street, you don't say these things to women because you're a threat. But if you're literally locked in a stock, anything goes. I could be like anything because you're non-threatening.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just it's a safety equation.
Did you know that was sort of the precursor to stand-up, what you were doing? Or was
No,
it just
no clue.
It was just a fun gig to do and just,
Yeah, I was originally working in the corn booth, and then I
Wait a minute, back up. What's the corn booth?
just selling corn.
That's literally like hard, like
I always worked at the
corn
Rents
on the
fairs.
cob?
Yeah, I was working the corn on the cob. I also worked on the arrows, like kids would shoot the little bows and arrows, and I'd pick up the arrows.
Well, this ties into your whole like ninja thing, right? Like, did you have a thing for this sort of like kind of, Stephen Colbert talks about when his father and his brother died in a plane crash, and he said one of the things that saved him was he got deeply immersed in the Lord of the Rings stuff and all of that kind of literature. And were you like immersed in any of that? Or I mean, I know. It was
I mean, I would. I was
Dungeons and
obsessed
Dragons,
with it.
all that stuff. So this is a natural extension of that. But what throws me a little bit is, at 16, you describe yourself as kind of a loner. You have one friend. You're a chubby kid.
No, by 16, I was pretty rocking in the social department.
I was going to say, because here you are in front of a bunch of people. At 16, I wouldn't have had the balls to do that.
At 13 was when there was a major change in my 12 or 13 because I fought the toughest kid in school and just let him beat the shit out of me. And that I didn't do it on purpose. Some kid was like, "Oh, simple, quiet Owen, let's get this kid beat up." And so he started a rumor that I was talking shit about the toughest kid in school. And my brother, who was older than me, was like, "You can't back down if someone wants to fight you." And I was like, "But this kid's going to kill me." He's like, "Just show up and just take the beating." And so I just went to the dance and he just beat me up. And after that, it was odd. It was a slow build, but that got my name in people's heads. At least they knew who I was.
You had the balls to show up. And
slowly I became friends with that kid who beat me up. And he got me into like football, and I started playing more sports and lacrosse and stuff. And yeah, I had like by senior year, I was captain of the lacrosse team. I was voted all these. I was like one of the more dominant people in my school, but I had no sexual vibes.
Yeah. Well, I
mean, I was constantly jerking, but I wasn't.
Who wasn't?
I always had this like I was just friends with all the women.
Yeah.
And then in college, it was just a switch.
And do you know what set the switch off? Do you know, like, did you just get more comfortable in yourself?
No, I just was the same as I was in high school. It just...
Oh, it's this thing of the women just start to say, hey, this is a cool guy because he's not just trying to get my pants in the first 5 minutes of the conversation.
Yeah, I guess. And it wasn't like... I don't know what it was.
It's crazy, man. Now, that was Plattsburgh, right?
Plattsburgh.
Yeah. And that's where you kind of got the TV bug, or you started doing stuff?
Yeah, I started hosting TV shows there. And then I would open for the comics who came. I opened for Kevin Hart when he came. And that was when he didn't... He was like... it was like 100 people in the crowd. Like, no one knew who Kevin Hart was at the time. Greg Fitzsimmons, Fallon came through, all these guys. And I would host and play piano and all this shit. And that's when I really got the bug.
And was that like your first time you didn't do any stand-up in high school?
No.
Yeah. And were your parents like cool and like going, hey, yeah, go for that? Or did they want you to be a teacher?
Yeah, they're like such hippie, like.
Yeah.
They're so, I mean.
Did you ever smoke weed with your parents?
No, they're beyond weed as far as like hippie. They're like nerd hippie. That's why I kind of always have hated hipsters. Because my parents are actually what they want to be. Yeah. But they're such fraud, fucking angry pricks.
Yeah. Why do you think that culture came about, and why do you think it's so ironic? Because on the one hand, they espouse open-mindedness and individuality, and yet they all think the same way and dress the same way and look the same way.
It's laughable.
And they don't even get the irony of that.
I tweeted once, and a lot of people didn't even understand the joke. I just said, what was the wording of it? Open-minded people aren't open-minded to closed-minded people. And no one understood about, like, all these people are like, right on, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, you're not open-minded. You're only open-minded to open-minded.
Yes.
Which is just one way of thinking.
Yes, exactly.
Like, I'll show you some fucking religious fundamentalists that you think are morons.
Right.
And they're just in a closed system. That's just a different system.
Yeah.
They believe in a certain set of rules, and that's it. It's a math equation. It's like some have infinity symbols, some don't. Like a closed system is just like, that's it. And if you think real open-minded, like my parents, are like, would not look down on any...
Right.
Like, if someone isn't hurting them or threatening them in any way, they never would be like, oh, this Christian moron or this... like.
Right. No, and I sort of... to bring it into our world, I never was, and I'm not a fan of like, sort of creating these camps of regular traditional comedy and quote unquote alternative comedy, and then there's sort of the regular rooms and there's the alternative rooms. And the whole reason I got into comedy, one of the reasons was because there weren't supposed to be any rules, and you could say and do whatever you want, wherever you want, whenever you want, right?
Totally.
So, right? Unless they don't like you, then they don't have you back and they don't pay you, and you go find somewhere else. So I've always make it a point, you work the improv and then you go work the hot tub show or whatever, and you should be able to just
like
be who you are.
Nerd bullies.
Yeah, and it's like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to play this game of like, well, I'm just going to hang. Like I live in New York City, right? So it's like I'm not going to just hang on the Lower East Side and just work bar shows. I also want to go work the Comedy Cellar and stand up New York and Gotham and headline there and blah blah blah. And so I get frustrated with that, but I think it's because part of the reason is you've got as comedians, we all tend to be insecure on some level, and so insecure people like to sort of band together like that, right? It sort of creates power for them that maybe they never had. I don't know, but...
Yeah, and it's almost like if they attack themselves first by not trying or wearing a scarf in the summer, that like when their joke bombs, it's not that, they weren't trying anyway.
Yeah.
It's just horse shit.
Yeah.
It's like someone's like, why are you wearing a suit? It's like, because I'm fucking trying.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I'm like, who's wearing suits? The Chinese. Right. Chinese people wear fucking suits, and that's why we're indebted to them.
Exactly. Were you an economics major? Because you seem to make a lot of references to economics.
No, not at all. I just read a ton.
Were you an liberal arts major? History?
World War II history, and then a minor in human evolution. And
What's a misconception that people have about World War II?
that America did. Misconception about everything is that it's its own war. It's obviously an extension of World War One,
Right.
and that America did more on the social sense than they actually did.
In terms of here in America?
Yeah, because the reason I got so fascinated by it is my hometown of only 10,000 people is the only town in all of America to take in Jewish refugees, and I thought that was fucking crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows that.
I would have thought New York City would be a town.
Zero.
Really?
None.
This is after World War II.
During World War II.
During World War II.
We took in 960, I think. And there's a book on it called Safe Haven by Ruth Magyar Isaacson, I think. And that blew my mind. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And so then I started researching more into it, and then it just unraveled the whole thing. In World War II, if you understand all the forces in it, you understand, 10,000 years of history, because it all just came to that point.
And you think America, there's a perception that we were a more open country socially after World War II?
Well, for everything.
Yeah.
For every war, Civil War is about the slaves. World War II is about the Jews. No.
Oh, no. It's more intricate than that.
And it's not only is it not, it's not even close to what these wars are about. It's like we'll go to war and then later find a group to be like, that's why we did it. But I'm not against it. We're chimps. We're chimpanzee monkeys.
Well, it's funny because now it's never going to be the same, and everybody wants this like stuff with ISIS or whatever the latest terrorist group that is to sort of be a bow, like sort of like World War II was, which wasn't neat, but relatively speaking, you knew the enemy, you knew where they were, they had a face, they had uniforms, you could see them, right? This is different, and and I think the problem is our culture hasn't caught up with the fact that in the way that we think in America that you're not going to fight wars anymore that way ever again. Ever. Like,
it'll never happen.
And it's this whack-a-mole, right? So, we'll get ISIS with drones. Fine. Well, that's fine because next week there's going to be another group that's been, percolating under the radar for the last 2 years, right? And then 2 years after that and 2 years after that. So it's interesting to me that you say, like, socially, like, because that ties into like sort of the perceptions of Muslims in this country, and that President Obama doesn't want to call these terrorists Muslims because he feels it's not fair to Muslims. Now there are Muslims that have been writing a lot, these clerics who say, no, we want to call them Muslims because it gets the rest of the Muslims pissed off at them because they're giving us a bad name. So I think socially,
I think they're Muslims that don't understand metaphor. I was talking to somebody about that. It's like, because Jews seem very non-violent, especially the ones I hang with. And I had a Jewish grandmother, not Jewish per se, but I'm culturally pretty familiar. And they seem very like, most rabbis and people that I talk to are very like, they usually end statements with question marks. Where it's like, well, what do you think life is?
Right.
And then Christians are fairly nonviolent. Like, Christians should be less violent because Christianity is basically Judaism with a dude who's like, let's be more mellow.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Right.
And then Muslims it's all the same God. It's all the same shit.
Right.
So why is it all so fucking different?
Right.
Muslims are blatantly more violent these days.
But I think this gets back to the thing we were talking about hipsters and the need. I think religion on some level, the problem with it is it's driven by people who need to have a group versus another group.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so that all gets to this insecurity shit, right? Like, I was raised Catholic, but now we're Presbyterian because we like the church in our neighborhood. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I have some Muslim friends. And it's like, I think you're right. At the Indians, friends, they have a God. I have a God. Shades of gray. It's a God.
Right.
The principles generally are the same within the religions. Right. But somewhere along the line, someone was told we have to create these lines in the sand.
Yeah, and it's not religion that causes war. That's a big problem I have with like Bill Maher's rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
These people that are like religion causes war, and the biggest warmongers in history are usually atheists, but not always. But Mao, Stalin, all these guys, they didn't have a god, and they just wipe people off. I think religion is a great justification for war, but it doesn't cause war. I think people like money like distribution of wealth causes war. And you're never going to stop that. People that are mad at the 1%, you can't be mad at a percentile.
Right.
Not to point out first grade math, but there's always a 1%.
Right. And there's 99 is more than one.
Right. There's a top 1% tallest little person.
Right.
It's like you're never like being mad at percentile is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. There's always going to be a disproportionate.
Right.
And by the way, one of the reasons why there's so few jobs for postgraduate America is because there's no fucking factory jobs. So a lot of people that should have been working in factories are going to college.
Right.
And as sad as that sounds,
right.
It's just a fact.
Right. And it's easy to go to college. You can go to college online, and you can get a degree. You can get a college degree, not be a blue collar guy. But I think that like if someone is sort of boxing people because they're the 1%, don't you think that's my issue with that has been, look, it's very hard for me to say that most Americans don't have some way to get to be 1%. Not all.
It's so free, it's laughable. I mean, my income more than tripled, like just a couple years into my career than my father's, and I'm literally pointing at my dick being like, "Grr."
Right.
It's like, if people want to make money, they can.
Yes.
And it's not even like nothing comes from it. A lot of these people that obsess about the 1%, it's like, what do you think happens when you have like any more money? I've made tons of money. I've lost tons of money. I've like, not tons in the big scheme, but like from Oswego, New York standards.
Yeah.
And it's like nothing fucking want to know what matters is being hydrated. Like, and I'm dead serious. I'm not trying to sound like a fortune cookie. It's just a fact.
It's true. He's sitting there with a Sprite and a bottle of water. So you're committed to this hydration, which I like.
Yeah, and I'm just getting past the flu, so if I get a little wiry. But the Middle East, what I was talking about is what it was. They put all this money in on a bunch of goat herders, and that sounds. Someone's going to say, "Oh, that's racist." It's not. They're literally holding goats or shepherds,
right?
And they're like, "Okay, here's trillions of dollars. Here's all the world's money. What are you going to do with it?"
Right.
And so then these dudes, the Quran preaches, peace in a lot of ways and taking care of each other and shit.
Right.
And now you have these Shaws with gold-plated fucking machine guns.
Right.
And now they have to justify it.
Right.
So what do? They start blaming people. Oh, it's America's fault. And then they get these people to fucking, start acting on that. Oh, it's the Jews. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's these people. If these people weren't in this tiny little piece of land,
right,
everything would be fine.
Right.
Like, Israel's not even that big.
Oh, God, no, that's the thing.
It's like, oh, if they weren't there, everything would be fine. Oh, really? You sure it's not because you're trying to justify that you have fucking people living in tents around your mansion?
I always say, just give the West Bank issue 2 months. Like, try it the other way for 2 months and just see if all the bad things that everybody says is going to come true is going to come true, and you're going to see that it's not.
Right.
Right.
That being said, I mean, also, they do treat Palestinians kind of fucked up there.
No, they
I'm
do.
I'm not going to say that isn't the case, but Israel's been through a lot of shit.
Oh yeah,
and it's like them being there or just Jews existing does not cause these people any problems.
No,
they just have to fucking justify their absurd opulent lifestyle, and so these poor. I say poor, even though they're obvious monsters, but these like extremists. They think what they're doing is right because they're getting behind just this ridiculous rhetoric made by people trying to justify their wealth, and that's what's causing it. It's not a religion; it's people being like, "I will do this."
Well, it's a little bit like David Koresh. I think it's the same. It's the embodiment of the same idea in person, but it takes different forms, right? Here in Jim Jones, right? You get a bunch of people together. Right, you put them in a camp. They're needy. They need direction. They need leadership.
Right.
You have this sort of God complex, right? So suddenly you become a Jesus figure to them. And I think it's the same thing.
World
with
War II.
World War II, and it's in Stalin, and you see it with the president of Syria, who was just interviewed by Charlie Rose. And you talk to this guy, and you listen to what he's saying. He's the greatest liar in the face of the earth, or in complete fucking denial about what he does to people and why he does it, and justified it. Like you can justify anything in your mind.
Oh, I don't believe in monsters anymore, really, because it's like they're made. That's another thing about World War II.
What do you mean made in what sense?
Like we had blood on our hands as Americans, all the West in World War II. Treaty of Versailles, after World War I, punished Germany so much that they had to listen to the craziest dude.
Yeah.
I had a great Dr. Skop in college. My Holocaust professor was like, when the building's burning down, you listen to the loudest voice. I love that because it's like you don't take a vote. And this dude was fucking obviously crazy, but how did he get power? You know, it's like, because every society has crazy people, but they just end up working at like the DMV or some shit.
Right, but you can bond people together with a common enemy.
Because
so
if you're starving, you will listen to whoever says there's a reason you're starving and they'll get you more food.
Yes.
It's like, why am I starving? Jews. How do we get more food? Poland. Right. It's like, that's what happened.
Right.
Because it's like, you don't want to believe that we're capable of that. You know, when you look at that footage of them, you know, bulldozing human bodies when they liberated these camps, I was so appalled that I was like, how do you get to that point? And I think that when you realize that humans are capable of that, it's you know, you start seeing it everywhere. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And, you know, the responsibility of the community to keep, you know, people chill.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I think once people go, how does it get to that point, right? How do you start bulldozing bodies?
Yeah, dehumanizing people.
So it starts to become, I think once you're led down that path, you're so down that path, right? Like who are the ones that put Nike sneakers on and drank the shit and then lay down and kill themselves thinking they were going to go to heaven, right? Thinking they're going to go to that place, right? How do you get to that place? I think you become brainwashed, right? There's an ability to mass brainwash people, right? It's the same thing that like people that can do, and we've seen it in comedy clubs. They have these like R-rated hypnotists, like that'll hypnotize people from the audience and get them to run around with like a chicken on their head.
Yeah,
and they really run around with chicken on their head, and it's not an act. So if you have the skill set or the power or whatever you want to call it, you can manipulate people into anything. And then once you take them down that path, there's no stopping, right? That's the thing. Like, because they start to think, oh, well, yeah, that's fine. He's just bulldozing bodies. But you have to create a bigger and bigger lie as the leader to justify the more outrageous action.
Right. Because it's like anti-Semitism is created from like needing to do something. Oh, okay. I'll give you like slavery, for example, in America. Dehumanizing Africans was like you had to do that to justify slavery. So we needed slaves. We tried to use white people. They kept fucking dying because they weren't immune to malaria.
Right.
You know, we're bringing over British people like indentured servants, and they just kept dying. Native Americans kept running away because they knew the terrain. So they're like, oh, Africans will work. So they start bringing Africans. And so then they're like, how do we justify putting humans in chains? They're not humans. And then from there, you start a culture of justifying what you're doing.
Right.
And Hitler believed what he was saying. That's the thing about Hitler is how's a guy like that made? That's why World War I's the shit people have to research. No one had seen, like, it's almost like that scene from, what's that movie with Brando where it's like the horror.
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now, when he's just like, just this broken guy in the darkness
Right.
where it's like the horror. And it's like, when they would see no one, like before that, wars, people would wear fucking feathers on their helmets, and maybe 100 people would die that day, and they'd all have beers and
Right. It was right.
You know, Verdun, like places like this, 20,000 people would just get mowed down,
Right.
and then they'd have to do it the next day. They would sit in trenches and watch their friends decompose in no man's land, and then 4 years later, Adolf Hitler's out. He's so deranged, he loses the ability of sight. So because of like mustard gas, I mean, the dude was just done.
Right.
And so when he hears that they surrendered, he had nothing. So he just started blaming anything.
Yeah.
And he believed it. And like that dude, people are always like, oh, he's such a good public speaker. He fucking wasn't. You ever watch it? Everyone's like, oh, he's so captivating. It's because he had an easy crowd. It's kind of like watching.
That's a comic's perspective for you.
It's so true. It's like watching those comics from like the 80s where they're like, I flew in and my arms are tired, and they're just killing.
Yeah.
And you're like, they would tank now.
No, I know.
I mean, God bless George Carlin, but some of his sets, I mean, I'm not saying anything out of church here, but some of his jokes, I'm just like, that would not kill.
No, you see with all the big comedians that made in the 90s. It's like, talking about buttons on your shirt or like, driving in a car. And it's like, at the time it would crush. But it was because I think no one had seen that thing before.
Right, it's
so
like
then once you
Adolf.
see that thing, right, and that's okay. So that's your point.
So
with
people
Adolf.
are hearing like, wow, and they're like, wow, he's such a good public speaker. It's like, no, you're listening to some desperate, hungry crowds.
Right. Who had not had it's like following a guy that's like borderline bombs, and you're just an okay comic, and you're just a little bit better, and you crush.
Right.
Because
or doing, I don't know if you've ever done Mick Betancourt's room where it's a recovering narcotics.
No, I haven't done.
So it's like everyone's sober, and it's the easiest crowd I've ever seen because they're all recovering narcotics addicts. And so they're just dying for endorphins.
And if you're a performer, you have to be recovering?
No, just any comic.
Okay. Right.
And so you go on, you're literally just like, hey, it's great to be here. And they're like, yeah, joy.
I'm not dead.
Yeah. And I like Hitler was just ranting about gibberish.
Yeah.
Like nothing he said was even logical.
Yeah, exactly.
And the crowd is just exploding.
I know.
And then, he had Parkinson's. He was addicted to meth. He couldn't get a boner.
Yeah.
It's like, and he's still everyone's leader. That's why I was like, how does he fucking hold that?
He's an amazing headliner is what he is. Do
really-
you talk about, does any of this make it into your, I mean, I've seen your act, but like in a
Not like
full
war
set.
shit, but I talk about, there's no good or evil. There's hungry and full. I do a whole thing about the end of war is full bellies, empty balls.
Yeah.
And I do a whole set about how I always see the war is not the answer bumper stickers, but you never see the answer. So I actually make bumper stickers that say full bellies, empty balls, because you'll never see a man capable of violence after coming. It's like, oh, God, someone's like, dude, someone's stealing your car. It's like, oh, no, he needs it more than me. It's fine. It's the same with hunger. Like, if you just ate, you're not mad.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Because it's like,
I go off, like I'll go on a rant with my wife, and it's usually, if I'm hungry, it's something I just can't hold it back. Like I get really, there's something happens. I gotta have food in my stomach.
oh, yeah, because then you start perceiving everything as a threat.
Right.
That's
it's the
what
animal
happens
in
with
us.
cops. It's like
If they ate a little bit more.
no, it's when your heart rate's elevated. You ever read Malcolm Gladwell, like Blink and all that shit?
Mm-hmm.
Where if your heart rate's elevated and you start perceiving everything as a threat. So I think one of the major problems with cops is they're not trained at a level of fear. So that's why they react in such insane ways.
How did you handle fear as a comic early on? We all have it. And how did it manifest itself with you? Would it be just tensing up, or maybe you didn't have it at all and you were just
Well,
comfortable
right
with-
before going on stage, I'd be like, well, I'm 6'7", and then I'd feel my huge cock.
Yeah.
And then I'd go on and I'd be fine.
You had me do that at the show we did.
I
in San
did, yeah.
Francisco.
I make everyone feel it.
I'm like, all right, I just met the guy. But you know what, Maria, I had to do it. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's tall and, intimidating. So,
No, have fear. I think I did. I started so young, and I think a lot of people's fear is being judged or that they won't. And I never had that.
mine is not getting invited back.
Right.
But we all have it. And when I make the biggest mistakes in my life, not necessarily just professionally, is when I act out of desperation or fear. And that desperation
yeah.
for me, that desperation for me is like, I got to have that. And not so much anymore, because you get to a certain point in your career and you've done a bunch of stuff and everything's okay. But like, there have been times, and there's still occasionally where you're like, oh, Jesus, is this going to happen the way I want it to happen? Is it going to work out the way I want it to work out? And it can be debilitating,
For me, it's feeling disrespected is when I get. That's when I.
Well, that happens early on a lot in this business. My issue for me was as a lawyer, the people, once I started doing stand-up full-time, and you're an open micer and you're doing like shit gigs for $50 at a bar room,
Yeah.
the people that controlling my life would not have been allowed to literally Xerox documents at my law firm. But now they had the power over me.
Totally.
And I had to get my head around that. And that was an issue for me.
For me, it was crowd members that disrespected me because I'm from a state of mind where I like actually fight people. So it's like if someone's gonna like,
Oh, you do physical?
I've been
me
in
too.
like several fights.
Yeah,
So it's like
me too.
It's like, and also not fought a lot because I know my place.
Yeah.
So when I see someone blatantly not have any regard for their place,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, if you're going to say that, I'm going to fucking kill you.
Well, it's funny, because I talk about that a lot in my act now. Like my wife tries to get me not to say something, but I think that you need to say stuff, otherwise you don't change people's behavior and they continue to be assholes. And I really believe it. And what comes from that is this I almost got arrested on Amtrak because I got in a big fight with the conductor because I didn't like the way he was talking to me.
Right.
I almost got in a fist fight with an Indian newsstand guy in New York because he told me he fucked me in the ass because I wanted to pay a plastic bag. He wouldn't give me a bag. And so it escalates. But I'm doing it from the point of view like, well, if I say something, this person won't act this way the next time to somebody.
By the way, if more people were like us, there wouldn't have been a Holocaust.
Yeah.
As soon as the Nazis started coming in, we'd be like, hey, asshole.
Yeah.
Don't talk to that guy like
it's
that.
like ridiculous. I was with a cab driver in New York.
Because everyone's always like, how do these things happen?
It's because
people
nobody
let them
fucking
happen.
says anything.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, she's right at times. Sometimes you just got to let it go, right? Like you got to pick your
Yeah, my
spots.
girl says the same thing.
And I'm not good at picking my spots. So I'll I'll say something.
And they're right. I mean, like, we have a higher chance of survival if we fucking chill out. But what they don't understand is if we chill out, then we aren't in the position we're at.
Yes. Exactly.
Because I was in a situation.
Finally, I met somebody like me, Maria.
I was in a situation with at the Ice House, and there was probably 30 people in the crowd. And there was a guy that looked literally like Mike Tyson, clearly just got out of prison. Because I can tell people that have just done time because they see everything as a threat.
Yeah.
And they don't. Everything's literal.
Yeah.
And got to the point where he was going to storm the stage over nothing. I literally go, has anyone here seen 50 Shades of Grey? And he just goes, no one's fucking seen it. And I go, what? By the way, in case you guys want to listen to it, I do a podcast called Why Didn't They Laugh? And I do a whole episode called Something with a Monster. And so I have it on tape if you guys want to listen to this whole thing. But anyway.
No, go. Tell them where they can hear it.
iTunes, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and it's on this network too.
Mm-hmm.
But it just got on this network, so I don't know where to go.
Sideshow Network or iTunes, yeah.
So afterwards, I had to get like escorted out and shit. The guy was like, really intense. And I got the crowd on my side at the end, but my girl was like, why do you do that? And I'm like, I don't have a fucking choice.
Yeah.
Like, if he smells weakness, I might be even more fucked.
Yeah, no, you have to say something.
Because I wasn't like, I'm going to kill you. I was like...
And he needs to understand
I was like, buddy, listen, this isn't fucking Shawshank. I was being funny about it, but he'd be like, no, you're definitely dead. It just wouldn't appease him in any way. And I'm like, you're here with your beautiful girl, who is gross, by the way. I was just trying to, like, make him feel better. I'm like, she's a beautiful woman. Just fucking disgusting.
And like 80% of the people in the room are just laughing that you're saying that she's a beautiful woman.
Yeah, and it wasn't even her physicalities that made her disgusting. It was just everything about her was disgusting.
Just her clothes?
No, she was heckling too. She was like, he'll fucking kill you. I'm like, you're just disgusting.
I was at the comic strip in Edmonton, and there's a 19-year-old girl in the audience who would not shut the fuck up for the host or the middle act. But manageable, but like,
right.
Comes to me, she's chit-chatty, I deal with it like I slam her a bit, not super hard, but like enough to know.
Yeah,
like,
a little bit.
I'm in charge, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's like Caesar the dog whisperer, just...
That's a little bit, yeah, because I think if you're a guy, you can't go after a woman the way you can go after another guy. Anyway, I'm about 7 to 10 minutes from the end of my set, and she's talking into my setups, and I go, look, we've been dealing with this for a while. I said, one more thing and you're out.
Yeah.
And she goes, what? I go, if you say one more thing, you're out.
Right.
And she flips me the bird. And I go, you're out. She goes, yeah, right. I go, security, you're out. And then her face changed. She went, you're throwing me out? I go, why? She goes, why? I go, yeah. I go, you want to know why? The fact you're asking me why you're being thrown out is why you're being thrown out. You're not even aware. Now, the crowd at this point is like applauding and going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And she's 19 with a 6-month-old kid, not married, okay? White trash. I'll fucking judge her. I don't give a shit, right? And I said, I don't think anybody's ever probably talked to you like this, which is why you think it's okay as a 19-year-old to come into this room and disturb 300 people for fucking an hour and a half.
Right.
And it's probably why you're fucking 19 with a kid and not married and no job. I said, now get the fuck out.
Right.
And your boyfriend stood up and went, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah, same thing happened to me recently.
And he goes, I go, what do you mean? He goes, this is like the third time I came to see you. I'm a big fan, and I brought her. Can I come back and see you the next time?
Yeah.
I go, yeah, you could totally come back. I said, and you can bring her, but she can't drink. She needs to learn how to behave. I wasn't doing it to be funny. At that point, I was so fucking ripped that somebody would be that inappropriate in a social situation. Like, someone needs to teach this fucking girl how to be.
I called a chick a cunt the other day. So I'm in Gotham, same situation. Chick is there with a dude. And I'm like, I can hear you. And she just keeps talking. I'm like, and by the way, I'm doing fine. It wasn't like, if there's like chinks in the armor and people are talking,
Yeah.
I take it on the chin and I just keep going.
Yeah.
But it's like a great crowd. And she's dead silent. She's like, so what are we doing after? And I'm like, you gotta stop. And I literally improv her a song. I do everything imaginable. And I go, lady, if you don't like stop, you're gonna have to go. And I'm like, and she's like, you can't. And so finally I'm like, listen, cunt. And I start like giggling when I say it. I go, I've never called a girl a cunt on stage before. I go, that felt so fucking good. I go, to be honest, this is the first time I ever felt it was justified. I go, you're a fucking cunt.
Wow.
And like people are just dying laughing. I go, by the way, if I was British, no one would think twice about that.
Oh, I know.
I go, that's a little bit of ethnocentrism, huh, Twitter? Yeah. So I go, get out of here, cunt. And they fucking kick her out. And the guy emails a huge apology, same type of thing. The guy was like, I'm so sorry.
that's great.
It was their first date.
Shit.
And I'm like, yeah. And then I went on this whole thing. I'm like, no, because I believe in equal pay and equal rights. I'm like, you want to call me a dick? I'll call you a cunt.
Right, exactly.
It's like, well, no, a cunt's bad because it's about female genitalia. I'm like, what do you think a dick is?
Exactly.
I'm like, you want to fucking play ball, bitch? You're a cunt. I'm like, no, why? Because I'm all about equal rights.
Yeah.
Because one time some chick was like, that guy is such a dick. He called a girl a cunt. I go, do you even listen to yourself? I'm like, what else do you call male genitalia? Junk? Like, that's synonymous with garbage, you fucking cunt. Junk? My junk? And by the way, I don't take any offense to junk or dick or anything. And I rarely call women cunts.
No, I know, but she deserves
it was a statement of like, I had to say something ridiculous.
Yeah, but at that point, the fact you didn't lose the audience is.
Oh no,
that
and
you were right.
And the reason
Because they all felt that way.
Oh, and I do have to explain this. The reason I did is because I was riffing with a British person earlier. So that's what I tied in cunt with that.
Yeah,
because they call their mates cunts.
Oh, I was in Scotland doing the festival.
Everything's a cunt.
Everything's a cunt. I felt so free. I was saying cunt in every fucking set that I was doing out there.
Oh, dude, all dudes are cunts.
Yeah.
All beers are cunts.
Like cunt to them is like asshole. The guy was an idiot. Like this cunt cut me off.
This
like
fucking
that's
cunt.
Yeah.
This was coming to earth. Fucking cunt.
By the way, this cunt story reminds me of another cunt story. I'm working, and you're going to be in Nashville.
Yeah.
At the Nashville
Vince Vaughn's Wild West Comedy Festival.
You're going to be
15th.
April 15th, and then the third weekend in April, you're going to be at the
Arlington Draft
House in Virginia, which is a really great venue. And I want to ask you in a second how you hooked up with the Vince Vaughn thing and talk about Sullivan and Son, but. I was working at Nashville's and Zany's in Nashville with Bobby Slayton. I was opening for him, and he was miserable, like just cranky, nasty to everybody, and walk in the room, which he tends to do.
Right.
You know, just saying.
How does he walk the room? What does he say?
Just fucking, just whatever. Example. He called a woman a fat cunt.
Oh,
just like, and you fat cunt. Like, like that.
That's to me. I understand. If I was a woman, I'd be like, "That's fucked up."
No. So here's what happened.
I'm not dissing on him, but like,
and it wasn't like fat.
That's
cunt.
what gives cunt a bad word. Name is like dudes that say it like that.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
So he said no. So anyway, long story short, he's basically like, just because he just taking his negativity about his life and where he was or whatever he was doing, whatever, and just bringing it on stage and just fucking waylaying people, right? So he calls her a fat cunt, and she grabs her purse, and she's about to turn and walk to the door, and he goes, all right. He goes, and he literally walked like about 15 or 20 people at this point. He goes, I don't want to walk another person. He goes, I'm sorry. He goes, you're not fat. But give me cunt. Come on. And
that's funny.
Hilarious.
That's super funny.
She stayed. She started laughing. Everybody in the room was laughing. He saved. It was the best save I've ever seen a comic do to this day.
That's really funny. Because, I mean, body image shit is so much worse than cunt to me.
Yeah.
Like, calling a girl fat or like...
Oh, yeah.
That's just... Because they have so much fucking pressure that they put on themselves.
Well, even guys, though. Like, I was at the club.
But it's different, though. Guys... I used to do a bit about shame. Like, how shame is good for men and bad for women, where it's like... You tell a guy he's fat, it's like, you're fat. It's like, oh, shit, I got to start jogging. How did I get fat?
Right.
You tell a girl, it's like, you're a whore. It's like, I'll show you whore. And then they just suck everyone's dick. I'm like, it always has the opposite effect on women. We're like, because when people are like, don't something shame me, I started seeing that on Twitter. And I'm like, so I really thought about it. Because as a man, I'm like, no, shame's good. Whiplash.
Yeah.
Fucking drum faster, bitch.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, but I'm always picturing men. Like,
Right.
like with women.
You do not get a woman to do something.
No, and that's not pity. It's just a different way of thinking. It's like, it just doesn't make them act like more of what you want.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you demand.
I like the way you think, man. You think a lot like the way I think.
It's just fucking like it's just based on experiences. It's like
no, but it's true and it's honest, which is great. I mean, what are you working on now? Like, talk about your podcast. Your podcast starts every time with your dad telling a joke.
I dabble with that sometimes because my dad's really fruity.
Yeah,
he's like the most flamboyant man alive.
Yeah.
So sometimes I like to have him tell a joke, but
the premise of your podcast is really interesting.
Yeah, it's like because comics will always bomb jokes when they work on new shit. So, you know, I'm on my like third hour material now. So now I'm like, it's like you got to really dig in. And I think living in LA and New York, you see the greatest comics like Burr and CK and Byrne and all these guys that are like, you'll see them bomb jokes and you're like, holy shit, how did Chris Rock just bomb a joke? And then you're like, everybody does.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the public doesn't get to see that process.
Right.
Of like, why didn't they laugh? So that's the name of the podcast, where I'll take one joke. Like the first episode I ever did was called Caesar Salad, where I'm in Florida and I'm doing a bit about how you shouldn't stress about life. I'm like, you know, don't stress about life, about the dumb shit. You know, it's about your family and hydration stuff. I'm like, because I mean, Julius Caesar took over the whole world and all he got was a fucking salad, you know. And so then I'm tagging it. I'm like, and the Earl of Sandwich got the whole lunch menu, and it was just silence. And I'm like, and Americo Vespucci got to name America. He just made the map. Columbus fucking found it, you know. And it's just bombing. And I'm like, what the hell happened? So I keep working on it. And then I realize that there's a chain called the Earl of Sandwich is like a Subway there.
Yeah.
So like they thought I was talking about a sandwich shop. So I'm like, okay. And then I realized that with an angry tone, it wouldn't work. Like if I'm like, all he got was a salad, I had to go, I mean, look at Julius Caesar. He took over the whole world. And what did he get? And then I have to go, a salad. And that would just, boom, laugh. And I'm like, okay, so now I have to say that melancholy and then tag that with like, it's not even a good salad. It's just lettuce and croutons, you know, and just how much work goes into this dumb fucking thing. And then how Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci didn't work because Hispanics would turn on me because they fucking hate Columbus. So, and half my crowds are usually Hispanic. So I'm like, all right, I'll just bail on Columbus. So then I started using General Tso and his chicken, and then it worked.
What do you say about General? What do you say about?
Well, the General Tso didn't do very much, and he got chicken so good that they know if they give you like just a bite, you'll do anything for more. And then I do an impression where it's like, try General Tso, and it's like, oh, I'll try this. It's like, oh, you like? And I do this, you know. Sometimes I don't do that character in like, you know, Blue States, but. Yeah, so I just show the process. And I'll show, you know, one episode was just called where I'm like getting so fucking pissed at this crowd member because he wouldn't take his feet off the stage. And then I find out he's French, he can't speak English. And you just see how misinterpretation is like the cause of most war. And people are good, they're just hungry and horny.
I had someone say something in the back. I was at Stand Up New York, and I go on stage. And I really I was working on a TV set, so I didn't want to fuck with the crowd. I just wanted to work on the material. And I hear this woman say something from the back of the room. And it's not a very deep room, Stand Up New York. And I go, what'd you say? Like, I was in a bit of a mood, too. Like, I just didn't want to deal with shit. So I was just like, let me put this chick in her place. So I don't want to deal. I didn't want her interrupting my set. I needed to run it for time and everything.
Yeah.
And she's looking not at the stage. She's looking to the like the left or the right of the stage. Like her side of her face is facing the stage. And I'm like, come on, look at me. She goes, she won't look at me. She won't say anything. I go, will you at least look at me if you're going to like say a heckle? She goes, I would, but I'm blind.
Oh,
like,
Jesus.
Oh, fuck. I go, oh, great. I go, shit, you're blind? And then all I could do is be honest in the moment and just go, I got nothing now, man. I'm not going to try to have some pithy comeback. Like, why don't you just have not have any arms and legs, too, and make it worse?
Yeah.
Right? Place went crazy, and then I felt bad, and I gave her a couple of tickets to the Daily Show as a thank you.
Be like, but the good news is you can never really be racist.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, has this helped you get your stuff better faster, the show?
Well, it's made me enjoy bombing, whereas in the past I would just hate it.
Yeah.
So now it's like, because the struggle is the affirmation set, or as my black friends call it, the get pussy set, where you just pop your best fucking jokes and bail, and that's death to comics.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Tell people why that's death to comics.
because you don't grow. That's how you end up just, if I see the guy do the same, it's one thing if it's just a few jokes that, are ringers. But if you're doing word for word the same set, every single set for 20 years, you will put a bullet in the back of your head.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like,
And the business won't recognize you, nor should it.
no.
You'll hit a certain level, and that's where you'll hit. And
Because
then,
you can be replaced by a play button.
yes.
So, and it's hard to fail, especially when you start getting ego,
Yeah.
which we all get because we have to, because you have to survive up there somehow.
Well, it goes back to fear. It goes back to wanting, like you want to fail just enough to grow, but not so much that you don't get invited back.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Like if we're we both headline, so if we're doing 45 minutes to an hour, you want to bomb 5 or 10 minutes here or there, but you don't want to bomb 35 minutes out of 45 because I don't think you're coming back.
Right.
Now, maybe if I had bigger balls, I'd bomb 35 out of 45 minutes most nights. But, you try to find some happy
and
medium.
and you also need the crowd to be happy.
Yeah. Like,
I want them to leave happy. So
Yeah.
I'll do exactly 5 to 10 minutes of news shit and the rest, make
how was acting for you? I know you've acted a lot, and I look at it as a different discipline as a stand-up, and you're a good actor, so I assume you do too. Did you get a lot of training early on, or was it just something? Are you acting more who your character is on stage, and how do you like that process?
I think I still have a lot to learn about acting, to be honest with you. I'm good at playing myself comfortably, which I think
You're
is
really good on Sullivan Son. You really
thanks.
fit into that well, and it was a good. You could feel the chemistry with you guys and Roy and
Yeah, I
Steve.
play a dumb guy who wants to fuck his mom. I'm glad that it's perfect for me. But it's like I think there's a skill in that of just talking normal. Took me a long time to learn that. But as far as like making drastic choices, like I'll see some actors and I'm like, how the fuck do they do that? So that I guess I'll probably need more training. But I don't even think that's what I want to do.
What do you want to do?
Just like act as myself in different situations.
Yeah.
Or like versions of myself.
Maybe do like a show like Louis has that kind of follows him around in his life. And
I want to write a show. Yeah, I want to write a show about if I moved back home with my family. 2 professor parents. My brother's a lumberjack, and I would be a substitute teacher after I humiliate myself attacking a table of deaf people by accident. I'm literally working on a show right now.
That's hilarious.
'Cause I'm from a town of 3 nuclear power plants. I might just call it either like reactors or like overreactor or something. Because it's like our town is based on nuclear fission.
Right.
And everyone is so fucking mental there that everyone just, it's a very sparky. It's like, I said cunt on stage recently. Like, that's insane. I just said it again on a podcast.
Yeah, that sounds like
I can never run for Senate. Or I should run for Senate.
should run because you're willing
Would you
to
vote
say
for me
cunt.
if I ran for Senate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Listen, she's totally into you because she'll play the piano. She'll do anything. She'll jerk you off. She'll do whatever. Not that Maria's like sleazy. I'm just saying,
Right.
you're a tough guy to resist. Weekend of April 3rd, you're going to be at the Arlington Draft House. April. I'm sorry, third weekend of April. I said the weekend of April.
Yeah.
Third weekend of April, Arlington Draft House in Virginia, and you're going to be April 15th at the Vince Vaughn Zanies, Nashville. How'd you come to, just before we wrap up here, how did you come to get tied into
With
the
Vince,
Nashville?
with Double V?
The Double V, yeah.
I'm just double check. Oh, yeah. It's April 17th and 18th, Arlington. But
April 17th.
Double V,
18th.
It's through Steve Byrne. I've been boys with Steve Byrne for years. I used to do a show called Gay Town, where it was a gay world where I was a closet heterosexual for Sony Digital. And
Was it a digital
series? Yeah, we did. It was fun.
You and Steve?
No, I had him on, but we were friends since before then.
From when he moved
He
out
played
here
my
from New York.
boss.
He and I were buddies in New York, and then he moved
He's
out
the
here.
man.
Yeah, and you got to know him here in LA.
And then it was just pretty organic. Like I met Vince with Steve like maybe 5 years ago, and then we all toured together for the Wild West because Vince saw me perform, and then
How did Steve and Vince connect?
I'm not exactly sure. Vegas somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Just comedy, high-fiving,
Yeah.
alphamale.com.
Right, like sort of a bottle service at a club.
Yeah, just silverback gorillas just spot each other across a room. Alpha.
Next thing you know, they're cleaning ticks off each other.
And those guys are just so like loyal, good, fucking good guys.
Steve's a great guy. I was he was working at improv in Miami Beach in West Palm, and I was working another venue, and I went over to see him. We hung out and had drinks. It was good to see him again. I hadn't seen him in a while. We used to hang out together a lot in New York. Really funny guy, good guy. So just through that kind of thing, it all
and then I just
cool.
We've all just been boys.
Nice. All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I'm going back to bed.
Absolutely. Check out the podcast. It's called
Why Didn't They Laugh?
Why Didn't They Laugh? You can see it on iTunes and the Sideshow Network .tv. And Arlington Draft House, April 17, 18. And April 15th, you're going to be at the Zanies in Nashville for the Vince Vaughn Wild West Booyah thing.
Hit me on Twitter, at Owen Benjamin.
At Owen Benjamin. And and I definitely want to do your thing because I got jokes that I'm stuck on. It would be fun to do it, man. It's a great idea. I think it's a cool idea. Thanks a lot, man. You're awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that was Owen Benjamin. Funny dude, plays the piano, knows history, knows exactly how to bulldoze bodies. He's, my kind of comedian. Great guy. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And again, find 3 people, send them the links to my podcast, ask them to subscribe this week. We keep building the nation. And check out my website, paulmecurio.com. New CD there. You can pick one up there. And email me, Facebook, Twitter, text me. I don't care. Send carrier pigeon. Explain these Lincoln Continental commercials to me with Matthew McConaughey. See you next week.